He's been called the best and most influential actor in cinema history. Cary Grant was one suave and glamorous actor in the mid-20th century during Hollywood's golden age. Audiences, and not to mention the ladies, couldn't seem to get enough of him, and critics routinely gave his films rave reviews. He was known for a distinctly thick and iconic transatlantic accent while projecting an image of being a slick debonair. In his era, he was Tinseltown's definitive leading man. But Grant lived a life of secrecy and rarely opened up and let the world know the real him. He lived out his days wearing a carefully constructed disguise. The persona he projected to the media and tabloid rags of his time wasn't who he really was. Very few people in his inner circle ever got a glimpse of the man he truly was. So join us as we peel back Grant's many layers to see if we can discover who he was when the cameras weren't rolling. From less than auspicious beginnings. Cary Grant was born Archibald Alec Leach on January 18, 1904 in Horfield, England. He was the second child of Elsie Maria and Elias James Leach. His mother was a homemaker and seamstress, while his father worked as a tailor's presser at a nearby clothing factory. A day before his first birthday, tragedy struck when Cary's older brother John William Elias Leach passed away after being stricken with tuberculous meningitis. Grant's childhood wasn't particularly happy. His dad was a drunk, and his mom suffered from severe clinical depression, leaving her cold and aloof. She not only lacked the ability to give affection, but she didn't know how to receive it either. Arguably, it was the death of Cary's brother John that left her in this state, and she never fully recovered. Grant later acknowledged his difficult experiences with his mother had an impact on his relationships with women throughout his life. But even though she struggled with her mental health, Cary's mother still managed to teach Cary how to sing and dance when he was 4 and was intent upon him learning to play the piano. She would sometimes take him to see a film at the local theater where he was treated to performances by cinema legends like Fatty Arbuckle, Max Swan, and Charlie Chaplin. When Grant was 9, his father had his mom institutionalized. He told his son Mom was going away on a long holiday and later asserted she died. As such, Grant grew up harboring resentment for his mother, especially after she went away. When she was gone, Grant moved into his grandma's house in Bristol. A year later, at age 10, his father got married for a second time and started a new family. The sad thing is Grant never learned his mother was actually still living until he was 31. His father only revealed this to him when he was on his deathbed. When he learned this troubling fact, Cary arranged for his mother to leave the mental institution in 1935. Grant developed a love for theater as a boy and into young adulthood. He especially loved pantomimes at Christmas time, which he would attend with his father. In time, he befriended a troupe of acrobats who called themselves the Penders. He proceeded to learn how to walk on stilts and started touring with them. When Jesse Lasky, a Broadway producer, saw Grant doing his routine with the Penders at the Winger Garden Theater in Berlin in 1914, he was very impressed. A year later, he was awarded a scholarship to attend the prestigious and private Fairfield Grammar School in Bristol. While there, Grant excelled academically, but was especially adept at sports. His pleasing looks and athletic prowess made him particularly popular, although he was also reportedly quite the mischief maker. Around this time, he started working backstage in Bristol theaters in the evenings and volunteered for work as a messenger boy at the military docks in Southampton in the summertime. Anything to escape the intolerable home situation he was stuck in with his abusive, alcoholic father. When he was 14, he got expelled from Fairfield. It's rumored he was caught in the girls' bathroom being a bit of a peeping Tom. After the cops showed up at Cary's father's door following his expulsion, Grant's dad signed a 3-year contract that allowed Grant to undergo training for his profession until he turned 18. With that agreement came a weekly salary paid out by the Penders and room and board. Eventually, after touring England with the troupe and picking up a Cockney accent in the process, he was selected to go to the U.S. to perform with the Penders on Broadway in a show called Good Times, which went on to run for 456 performances. The making of a film legend. Appearing on Broadway gave Cary the credentials he needed to take his acting career to the next level. After that lengthy run on stage, Grant chose to remain in America, and in 1933 he landed his big breakout Hollywood role, appearing in the 1933 film She Done Him Wrong, opposite Mae West. In 1934, Grant got married for the first time to a woman named Virginia Sherrill. The two eloped shortly after meeting at a party. As much passion as they likely shared at the outset of their relationship, it didn't last. 7 months later, Grant and Sherrill called it quits and went their separate ways. Throughout the remainder of the 30s, Grant established himself as Tinseltown's favorite leading man. He starred in several light comedies around this time, including His Girl Friday, Bringing Up Baby, and Topper, showing off his comedic timing and physical humor skills. He also occasionally starred in more serious offerings such as Only Angels Have Wings, proving he was more than just a one-trick pony. In 1935, after his first contract with Paramount Pictures ended, Grant became one of the first actors to leave behind the studio system. Ultimately, this allowed him to pocket a much larger chunk of his future box office profits. In 1939, Grant began production on Gunga Din, a war film that also featured the performance of Douglas Fairbanks Jr. Fairbanks' father had been one of Grant's first Hollywood pals after meeting on the ocean liner that brought him over from England. During the early 30s to the end of the 40s, Grant publicly lived with fellow actor Randolph Scott in an oceanside bungalow they like to call their bachelor hall, leading many to question whether or not the two were lovers. Later in his life, Grant's sexual orientation was called into question once again when he lived with an openly gay costume designer named Ori Kelly in New York. During the 50s and 60s, Grant developed a man-of-the-world persona and acting style after becoming alienated by the realism that had taken over the film industry. This disguise was perfectly encapsulated in the 1955 Alfred Hitchcock film To Catch a Thief, which allowed Grant and his co-star Grace Kelly to improvise some of their lines. His biggest box office success came in the form of another Hitchcock feature in 1959, North by Northwest. Retirement and beyond. In 1966, not long after having a daughter with Diane Cannon, his third wife, Grant retired from acting to pursue numerous business ventures. For a while, he represented the cosmetics company Fabergé while also sitting on the board of MGM. He later joined the boards of Hollywood Park, Western Airlines, and the Academy of Magical Arts. Grant expressed very little interest in making a Hollywood comeback and remained in relatively good health until he suffered a stroke in 1984. For the remainder of his life, he toured around the U.S. in a one-man show. On November 29, 1986, Grant died at age 82 from a cerebral hemorrhage in Davenport, Iowa. In 1999, AFI named him the second greatest male star of the golden age of Hollywood cinema, right after Humphrey Bogart. Now it's time to hear from you. What was your favorite Cary Grant film? Let us know in the comments section below. And before you go, make sure you give this video a like and subscribe to Factsverse if you haven't already. Click the bell icon to stay updated on all our latest content.